James Milner had always envisioned a tranquil retirement, so when he settled into his quaint new neighborhood, he was eager for a serene life. However, he was unaware of the true nature of his neighbors until their disruptive behavior began to wear him thin. After enduring their antics for too long, James decided it was time to take action. He meticulously planned a clever act of retribution and eagerly anticipated the look of surprise on their faces when they returned from work that day. That morning, James woke up feeling irritable and discontent. From the moment he opened his eyes, anger simmered within him. For weeks, a troubling pattern had emerged outside his front door. Every package he ordered vanished from his porch. Frustrated and at his wits' end, James was determined to uncover the reason behind the thefts. As weeks passed, James grew increasingly anxious, searching for answers about the mysterious thief who was taking his packages. He needed to catch the culprit red-handed and put an end to the thefts. One seemingly ordinary Wednesday, James spotted small security cameras at a local Walmart. Determined to solve the mystery, he bought them on the spot and carefully installed them on his front porch. He was resolute in uncovering the identity of the thief and recovering his stolen goods. James suspected he knew who was behind the issue, but he needed concrete evidence. That morning, he decided it was time to review the footage to uncover the truth. Rising from bed, James went directly to his home office and powered up his computer. Exhausted from dealing with the recurring problem, he was ready to confront the frustrating reality he was about to discover. James had arranged for a package to be delivered the day before, and by evening, it had vanished as anticipated. He was confident the security camera would have captured something useful. Once his computer was up and running, he quickly accessed the footage. Skipping to the delivery timestamp, he found something in the video that instantly fueled his anger. James Milner, a retired veteran, dedicated his life to his work, prioritizing it above all else. Raised in Houston, Texas, he harbored a deep conviction from a young age that his future lay in military service. Immediately after graduating high school, James was accepted into the armed forces, embarking on a journey he had long anticipated. His commitment to this path was unwavering, and he pursued it with relentless focus. Throughout his life, James never paid much attention to romance or having children. He found fulfillment in his daily work and had little interest in other aspects of life. However, as retirement approached, James faced a new reality. He had to embrace a different phase of life. While he wasn't distressed by this change, he was determined to make the most of his remaining years. His first step was finding a comfortable new home where he could enjoy this new chapter. For the past several years, James had settled into a small city apartment whenever he was home. However, he now desired a more spacious and comfortable living arrangement. With a bank account brimming with years of savings, he was ready to invest in a new home. James had his sights set on the suburbs, envisioning a tranquil and serene retirement. His dream was to find a place where he could enjoy a peaceful and leisurely lifestyle, far from the hustle and bustle of city life. James wasted no time searching for a home and promptly reached out to a real estate agent when he found a promising property. They arranged a viewing without delay, and soon James found himself in a quaint suburb, quite distant from his previous residence. As he cruised through the serene streets, he was captivated by the area's vibrant greenery. The charming houses and the sight of small families enjoying the neighborhood added to the appeal, making it an inviting place to consider. James observed a father and daughter playing joyfully on their front lawn, a smile spreading across his face. He couldn't help but wonder how his own life might have unfolded differently. Arriving at the large gray house, James felt an immediate sense of relief. Meeting the real estate agent, they toured the stunning home, and James was instantly captivated by its charm. He was amazed by the beautiful cream-colored walls and the tall windows. The house was large and spacious. It was exactly what he had been looking for. He could see himself living there for the rest of his life. It was beyond perfect. After a quick inspection, his mind was already made. "I'll take it," he told the young woman with a wide smile on his face. In the following weeks, he signed all the papers, and eventually, the house was registered under his name. He hired a moving company and quickly began moving into his new home. Slowly but surely, he watched it all come together. Once all of his furniture had been placed in the correct places, it was time to unpack the boxes. But just then, he heard a knock on the door. As soon as the knock echoed through his house, a small smile played on his lips. Had his new neighbors come to introduce themselves? He set the box aside and quickly made his way toward the front door. When he opened it, he was pleased to see a young family. "Welcome to the neighborhood," the mother called, handing him a basket of freshly baked muffins. That day, most of James's new neighbors stopped by his house to welcome him to the neighborhood, and they all seemed lovely. But James couldn't help but notice something. His next-door neighbors had made no attempt to stop by and introduce themselves. That evening, James sat on his front porch and looked out of the neighborhood. His next-door neighbors were home, but they didn't bother to stop by. James didn't think it was a big deal. Perhaps they were busy or just not all that social. But he had no idea what kind of people they were. The first few days in his new house passed in the blink of an eye, but he enjoyed every moment of it. However, as James adapted to life in his new, big house, he realized how empty his rooms were. He didn't have enough furniture to fill the house up. James decided to look for furniture online. At his age, the last thing he wanted to do was walk around a big furniture store. One evening, he sat down in front of his computer and began browsing the web for furniture. He just hoped he could find something worth buying. Luckily, James found a few things, like the perfect couch and bookshelf for a reading nook. He couldn't help but purchase them right away. If only he knew what was about to happen. The delivery was set to happen in the next few days, and James waited patiently. Every afternoon, he would check his front porch step, but each time he did, he was disappointed to find that there was nothing there. Before he knew it, the week had come to an end, and he still hadn't received what he'd ordered. James immediately assumed that something had gone wrong with the delivery. Had they dropped his things off at the wrong house? The truth was far worse. James wondered if the delivery was running late. He assumed he would get it the following Monday, so he decided to wait patiently. But when Monday afternoon rolled around, he decided to call the small furniture store. But he was in for a surprise. "I ordered a bookshelf and a bookshelf last week, but they were never delivered," he told the person on the other end of the call. The woman checked their orders, beyond confused by what the man had said. "Sir, it says here that the package was delivered on Wednesday," the woman said. James scratched his head in confusion, asking her to double-check the address. But when she confirmed his address, he knew something was seriously wrong. They had emailed a photo as evidence that the delivery driver had placed his items on his front porch. But where were his packages? James couldn't think of a reasonable explanation as to how 2 large packages could go missing just like that. That afternoon, he sat on his front porch with a cup of tea, staring out over the neighborhood as he wondered what he was supposed to do next. But as he sat there, his eyes once again trailed to his next-door neighbors. That was when he noticed someone peeking from between the curtains. As soon as he noticed the person staring, he raised a hand, waving politely. But they did not return the gesture. Instead, they walked away from the window. James thought this was strange, but he didn't give it too much thought. That night, not knowing what to do, he decided to get a few extra things for around the house, hoping that the delivery would be a little smoother. He asked for priority delivery, which meant that his items would be delivered the very next day. Unfortunately, James never received them. That evening, James was furious. What on earth was going on? Why were none of his packages showing up? He tried to make sense of it, but as he stood on his front porch, he thought of something. What if someone had been taking his packages before he could bring them inside? Right then and there, James decided to head over to his neighbor's house. Although they hadn't spoken before, he wanted to ask if they had noticed anything suspicious. James walked right across his driveway and toward their front door. He knocked, and a second later, he heard the door unlock. He watched as a middle-aged man pulled the door open, his face twisted in annoyance. "Can I help you?" he asked, clearly unhappy that James had knocked on his door. "Hi there, neighbor," James said, insisting on being polite despite the man's sour expression. "I'm James Milner. I just moved in next door." The man said nothing, waiting for James to continue. "Some packages have been disappearing from my front porch. I was wondering if you might have seen someone take them." "Nope," the man said, and tried to close the door, but before he could, James spotted something behind him and quickly stopped him from closing the door. James was beyond confused when he looked into his neighbor's house just to see the bookshelf he had ordered the week before. "Is that my bookshelf?" he asked, stunned by the strange discovery. But the man quickly shook his head. "No, we've had that old thing for ages." "Now, if you will excuse me," the man said, and shut the door. James couldn't believe it. The bookshelf was in perfect condition. There was no way that they'd had it for ages. He didn't trust a word he said. He was too stunned to speak as he walked back to his house. He was certain that his strange neighbor had stolen the bookshelf from him. He decided to confront the man the very next day, but the man, Todd, refused to admit that he had stolen it. "What are you going to do about it? Call the police? You can't prove that I stole it from you," Todd said with a cocky smirk. That infuriated James. Unfortunately, Todd was right. He couldn't prove it, so he had to find some kind of proof. James didn't know what to do. For that entire week, he thought about his neighbor and what he had done. He wanted to get him back, but he didn't know how. But when James walked into a local Walmart one casual afternoon, he saw something that gave him the perfect idea. As soon as he spotted the small security cameras, he knew just what to do. He was going to catch his nasty neighbor in the act. That evening, when he was certain that most people in their neighborhood had gone to bed, he installed the camera on his front porch, hiding it behind a pot plant. The next morning, he jumped into action. He decided to order something small for same-day delivery, hoping he could catch Todd stealing his package on camera. He decided to give him the entire day while he stayed inside his home, reading and watching television. If the camera proved that his neighbor had been stealing from him, he was going to get his revenge. He already had the perfect plan. That evening, before heading off to bed, James checked his front porch. Just as expected, the package he had ordered was missing. Although his plan was working, he was still furious. How could someone do this to an innocent old man? He was going to get to the bottom of this, and he was going to make the thief pay for what they had done.